Much activity in South Africa's economy with low GDP figures threatening a weaker rand and the labour sector in disarray. We spoke to AdCorp labour economist Loan Sharp to hear his views on that labour sector, unemployment and unionisation.
What we're seeing is the disintegration of the formal sector labour market. We're observing not isolated incidents of violence, intimidation and strikes. We're seeing part of a systemic problem, which will steadily get worse. The background to all of this is that union membership is declining. And as a result, unions are responding with more strikes, more violence, more intimidation in an attempt to attract more members. But what is actually happening is it's isolating their members even more. And so unionization within the private sector, if you exclude government, is less than 15%. So really about 1 in 8 workers in the private sector is a member of a trade union. It's completely different in the public sector, of course, where 4 out of 5 workers are members of a trade union, typically COSATU. But what we're observing here is the unraveling of South Africa's labour relations system. Certain things that we've relied on for a long time, like the CCMA and the labour courts and bargaining councils and trade unions, all of these institutions are in terrible trouble. The evidence is coming in from everywhere, from weather satellites in the sky, from the use of cash recorded by the Reserve Bank, from vehicle sales to the number of people who have credit outstanding. Every one of these numbers suggests that employment in South Africa is much greater than anybody appreciates. We at AdCorp have been saying for several years now that the true unemployment rate in South Africa is much lower than the official figures because so many more people are employed. 5.6 million more people are employed in some kind of economic activity than the official statistics suggest. So the informal sector is thriving, the formal economy is flat on its back, and we're currently at the lowest point reached in terms of permanent recruitment in South Africa in the last 15 years. So we're actually at a lower point now than we reached during the 2008-9 recession in terms of permanent employment. So permanent jobs are as scarce as ever. Retrenchments are occurring at an extraordinary pace. And what's happening is the economy is reorienting itself toward temporary and contract workers. So where temporary workers only represented 8% of total employment in 1990, today they represent about 1/3 of total employment. And I think we're going to see the continued informalization and fragmentation of the labour market until finally the political reality dawns on the government and we embark on a process of labour market reform. We desperately need labour law reforms. We need a labour reform or labour law reform commission of inquiry perhaps to look into labour laws. This would be the first time since 1979 that we had such a comprehensive review, so it's about time we have a review of our labour laws and regulations. My view for the formal sector employment picture is very bleak. Permanent employment is declining. Employment in the sectors that are sensitive to minimum wages is declining. Employment is declining even in the advanced sectors of our very modern economy like finance and retail. Companies are becoming so much more conservative in their use of labour, so much more economical. The long-term employment picture in South Africa is exceedingly bleak. We are still, even if you believe Stats SA's figures, we are still 600,000 jobs short of the peak reached in 2008. So we haven't clawed back many of the million jobs lost over that period of crisis. And I don't think we're going to regain those jobs. How this plays out in next year's election is very interesting to me because elections so far haven't really been contested in South Africa. But we've got more than 500,000 extra people unemployed. We've now got the biggest size of government payroll in South African history. So more workers depend on the government than ever before. Fewer workers are employed in the private sector than in the last 25 years. So this is going to create, I think, an explosive combination of events for next year's election.